they really missed out on a naming opportunity with this one. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. As part of my Fast and Furious review series, today I'm going to be talking about the 2017 action sequel, The Fate of the Furious. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all that extra content. The Fate of the Furious stars Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, and Jason Statham, and was directed by F. Gary Gray. When the mysterious cyber terrorist Cypher, played by Charlize Theron, recruits Dom, it's up to the rest of the team to stop her evil plan and possibly take down one of their own in the process. Simple is no longer in the Fast and Furious vocabulary. To be honest, it hasn't been for a long time, especially when it comes to the insane action. But this movie in particular really highlights just how complicated this franchise has gotten. It might sound a bit silly since we are talking about these big, dumb popcorn action movies, but over time, we've moved away from these films being able to entirely stand on their own. The stories are intricately interwoven with each other, and the characters now have decades of backstory to them. I think this adds to the enjoyment for longtime fans of the franchise, but I could see it being a source of confusion for newcomers who haven't watched the earlier films. I gotta say, I'm very torn on this 8th installment. The first time I saw it, I was actually kinda underwhelmed by it. It was okay, but I found it to be a little forgettable. Rewatching it, those feelings were only reaffirmed for me. In a big, dumb, fun action franchise like this, it's kinda hard to label something a misstep, but this is about as close as you can get to that. It's still fun, but something just feels a little off about it for me. Really, I think it's actually a bunch of somethings that make this feel so different. The first something that I want to talk about is the story. Overall, it's still just as absurd and weirdly tech-centric as the 6th and 7th movies were, but I would say it goes even further down that route. Not only do we have a lot of computer screens and hacking duel scenes, but it also makes a point to directly tie into the stories from the previous two films. And that's interesting to a point, but I gotta say, all the tech stuff from those movies, I thought were the worst components, so that doesn't really help this one in my eyes. Another big story issue here is the separation of Dom from the rest of the team. Now, I actually like the concept here. By making Dom a rogue character, it pits him against his own team and forces alliances among enemies, which mixes up the franchise formula a bit. I just can't help but be disappointed by its execution. The way it's designed, we as the audience know the entire time that Dom's still actually a good guy, even though he's being forced to work with the bad guys. So the resolution of the story is really predictable from the get-go. Rather than letting the audience in on the fact that Dom's being blackmailed in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, I think it would have been way more effective to hide that from us. That way, we would have been in the same shoes as his team, not understanding why he was doing this until much later in the film. This whole rogue Dom thing also leads into another issue I have with the story, and that's the incorporation of Deckard Shaw. For a group that's so hyper-focused on family and loyalty, they're just way too accepting of Shaw. I totally understand, in the context of the story, why they would bring him in, and why he'd be helpful to their mission, but the fact that they trust him in the way that they do so quickly just feels unbelievable. In a franchise where you really have to have a high level of suspension of disbelief. I don't know, I'm probably overthinking it, but I mean, he murdered one of their own in the last movie, and tried to kill all the rest too, so something just doesn't add up there. That said, I can't complain too much though, because I really like the character of Shaw, and once again, he's a highlight of the film. He's very entertaining on his own, but he's also great when paired up with other characters. Everybody from Hobbs to a baby. That is a nice segue to something we always have to talk about when it comes to the Fast and Furious franchise. Family. It's been a big part of the series since the first movie, and it's almost always one of the best aspects of each new installment. And I gotta say, something feels really off about it here. I think Paul Walker's absence is certainly a contributing factor to that, since there's always been that buddy-brother dynamic between Dom and Brian, but I think the issues go beyond that. It feels like this theme of family is really overused in this film and just constantly drilled into us. There's a big reveal in this movie that I'm not going to spoil, but it just doesn't work for me, and I really wish they didn't go that route with the story. The family concepts almost feel like they're exploited this time around, and dip dangerously close to soap opera melodrama territory at points. These emotional aspects aren't necessarily bad, but I do think they distract from the fun of the film this time around, rather than accentuate and add depth to it as in the previous films. Despite my story-related gripes, I still did find this to be an entertaining movie, largely thanks to the action. It's as insane and over-the-top as usual. Again, we are well into the second era resurgence of this franchise, where plausibility is out the window. The characters are basically superhuman at this point, none more so than Hobbs, who can throw people around like it's nothing, and who can redirect torpedoes with his bare hands. The opening Cuba sequence brings the franchise back to its roots, focusing on a simple street race, with a level of insanity only fitting for film 8 in the series, of course. As expected, this film is loaded with ridiculous action sequences. We've got submarines, car harpoons, jetpacks, ice chases, a ridiculously entertaining zombie car sequence. As usual with these films, a lot of these stunts were actually done practically, but this time there's this weird visual glossiness to it that makes it look almost like it's mostly CGI, which feels less impressive. I think that's why the fight sequences are actually my favorite action set pieces here. The prison escape is really good, but my personal favorite is Shaw's plane fight. So even with rewatches, I find myself feeling very mixed on this movie, and maybe it's because the movie itself feels mixed. The other films always felt like they had this kind of confidence to them. Whether they were serious or silly, they knew what they were. This one struggles with its tonal balance. There's a lot of entertaining levity, the banter between Hobbs and Shaw, Roman's impractical ice car, but the core story takes itself too seriously, to the point of melodrama, so it never quite strikes that fun balance of most of the other films. It has most of the things I love about the franchise, they just don't quite feel right. There's just something a little off about them. And so there's just something a little off about this movie. It's still enjoyable, but definitely a step down this late in the franchise. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is, unsurprisingly, the action. I think it's a given at this point that the Fast and Furious movies are gonna have extremely ridiculous yet entertaining action sequences. And at least on the surface, that's what we most want to see from these films. Each subsequent installment one-ups the previous film and goes even bigger, and that's what we see here. Even though these aren't my favorite stunts in the franchise and are a bit bogged down by their green screen backgrounds, it's pretty much impossible not to have a smile on your face when you watch them. The fights are fun, the ice chase is ridiculous, and the zombie car sequence is just utter insanity. The second pro is the premise. I definitely have my issues with how the story was executed, but I think the concept behind it was interesting. Having a rogue team member isn't supremely original in the grand scheme of things, but it is original within Fast and Furious. These movies always revolve around the core team working together to take down some opponent, or in the earlier films, to get away with something. This movie's premise kind of twists that around a little bit, making one of their own the foe that they have to take down. And with a group where family and loyalty is the most important thing, that creates an interesting and unique conflict we hadn't yet seen in the franchise. On the con side, the biggest issue is definitely the story, specifically how it's actually executed. They take a concept that could have been done in a very unique and unexpected way and manage to play it out in the most obvious and predictable way possible. We as the audience get too much information far too early in the film, and so even though Cypher's a cool villain and the plot is typical late franchise fare, it's not nearly as compelling as it should be because there's no mystery to it for us. We know exactly what's happening at all times, and so the only unknown here is what's gonna happen when Dom and his team finally clash, but even that's not really an unknown. The second con is something I never thought I'd put on the con side of a Fast and Furious movie, and that's the family. family is the heart and soul of this franchise. It's the one thing that grounds this ridiculously absurd set of films and makes them more than just dumb, mindless action movies. And so it hurts to put this on the con side, but they just take it too far here. It's family this, family that, every 2 minutes, and it's just too much. There are some really melodramatic twists that come into play that just didn't work. And there are aspects of the plot that feel entirely at odds with this hyper-focus on family, like Shaw's fairly painless incorporation into the team. The characters still manage to hold this movie together, but the family thing is just way too overemphasized here. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying The Fate of the Furious or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give The Fate of the Furious 3 out of 5 paws. It's got the big, ridiculous action that you expect and want from the franchise, but it has some issues with its story execution and goes all in on the family themes to the point of melodrama. I would recommend The Fate of the Furious to existing fans of the Fast and Furious franchise. It's the kind of movie that has its moments of big popcorn movie blockbuster action that could be enjoyable to anybody in the mood for ridiculousness, but it's also very caught up in its own established characters and multi-film storyline, which could take away from the enjoyment for somebody who's unfamiliar with these movies. If you're already invested in these characters and have seen at least both Fast 6 and 7, then I think you'll have a much better chance of enjoying this one. If you liked The Fate of the Furious, I would recommend Furious 7. That film handles its tonal balance much better, providing both the fun entertainment and the emotional aspects we'd expect from this franchise. It also introduces Deckard Shaw and has a storyline that's important for understanding what's going on in this movie. If you like the bantering and relationship between Hobbs and Shaw here, you've got to check out the spin-off movie, Hobbs and Shaw. It takes the most ridiculous elements of these later Fast and Furious movies, cranks them up to 11, and then throws Hobbs and Shaw in the mix. And if you want to see some more of Jason Statham's driving and fighting skills, you might want to watch The Transporter. It's got some really great action sequences and is pretty fun, especially with Statham's humor. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen The Fate of the Furious? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie featuring a rogue hero? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or add it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.